Hi, so today I want to show you my full editing process in Blender. As in, I'm editing all my YouTube videos in Blender and I want to show you how to do this from the very start to the end, including every little step. So, first we copy our files. I've already done that. I'm sorry, I skipped that step. I fucked my promise. Anyway, so I've copied my file something.mp4 here into the directory where I want it. And so the first thing I am going to show you is how I set up my directory structure. I have this template and it always looks like this. I have these different directories and they all contain different files that I need for editing a video. The most important one is the raw directory, and in there are all my raw videos, photos, and so on. Sometimes I also make a photo directory, but usually I put everything in raw. And then sometimes if I have a lot of nature vlog kind of stuff, I will use an extra directory within raw and just call it crap or trash or something. Like the stuff that is too shaky to use or redundant or something like that. So I don't have this in the raw directory where I want to see only the files that I use in my video in the end. Then this is the audio directory. I have a distinct audio directory where all my Audacity files go if I do a podcast and I do noise removal or something like that. And the B-roll directory is also for cinematic purposes. There I will put my B-roll. So yeah, I look at all the files before and I separate B-roll from A-roll. I also do that in the Blender file later. Maybe I can show you an example of that, but it's not super interesting. Just put it up another channel and then you know it's B-roll or color mark it. That's the way I usually do it, so I know how much is B-roll. Because I want a video, a nature vlog, I want it to be like 90% B-roll and not so much my stupid face, because viewers don't like that. Then music, usually I use Artlist and I copy all my Artlist music into this directory, but lately I haven't been doing this because I'm lazy and I don't want a lot of redundancy, so this is optional, but only if you always, keep your file names and always keep the same directory structure. If you change the directory structure, then, well, you're screwed, because then your external paths will not work anymore. Then there is the overlay directory, and here I have stuff like this little animation that I made for users to subscribe. So this is a MOV file, and the reason for that is because QuickTime Video, as in the QuickTime container with the QuickTime codec, supports transparency. Therefore you can just add this as an overlay, as an alpha over mode in your Blender file, which is pretty neat. And there are some other stuff, like I have this TV frame that is from a Pexels graphic, I think, and then this, and then the little cutout, so I can put myself in. I will overlay this with a multiply mode, and yeah, this is the background, and this is also an overlay frame, so I just have this to use that. And then here's a part of my end card. This is not up to date. I lost the dot because my Instagram account got striked. So end cards are overrated. So there's the raw directory. This is the thumbnail directory, and I have my thumbnail template in here as well, which makes it very easy for me to edit thumbnails consistently. If it changes, I will change the whole template, and I will always copy from the new template, of course. And then finally, there is a very important temp directory. The temp directory is for rendering the video. It will end up in the temp directory when it's done. And so that's the only purpose of that, to have different output. And then there is the description template. So this is my description template. Anyway, and then there is this Blender file here. Usually I call it blank blend. In the template it's called blank blend, but here it's no msoffice.blend, because the video we are editing now is about Microsoft Office and why I don't use it anymore. So let's switch desktops. Here is my Blender, and I'm just gonna drag this over here. Now I want to open this file. I just drop it in here, right? And then open. And then I will see this file, right? And I want to walk you through what my preferences are, or all the settings that I have. Let's go to the properties what is it called? It's not actually called properties, right? Yes, properties. So Shift F7. I must tell you though, I have tweaked all the shortcuts. For instance, to cut a strip, I use C and not K, because cut is C, and I never use the change shortcut. Also, you can keep both parallel. If you really need change, you will be able to keep it just in the video sequence editor. You can set that to C. When a strip is selected, you can just use C for change, and if a strip is selected, then you can use C to cut. So I use C to cut, and I never use a hard cut, so Shift K, I never use that, usually only for bug fixes. Sometimes, if a frame is missing, then you can use that, but usually you don't need that. But let's go through the properties first. This is in this little printer menu here, like the output settings, and there is this properties menu, and here you can change everything about the format. So let me walk you through this. You can always maximize an area, like every one of these areas here you can maximize by pressing Control and space. But we're not going to do this because it looks ridiculous, but you can do that. So if you want to have the preview, this is the preview window. If you want to have the preview window here in full screen, just Control and space, and then you can have it in full screen and Control and space to go back. Okay, the resolution is the standard high definition resolution, and 1920 times 1080 pixels squared and 100% output. You could reduce this to 25, you don't have to enter percent here. If you wanted a smaller pre-render, as in you just want to render every 4th pixel, then you just choose this and it will render faster and you can have a real preview of your output. Just sometimes there are scaling glitches with elements that are with respect to other quantities in the variable space of Blender, I think. I don't know which glitches these are, but sometimes there are with fonts or something, or spaces, or just make sure that you always test your output. I want to give you an example. Let's just put in a little bit of text here. I press Shift A and then click on the text, and I'm just gonna write some text. And then press F12, and that will give you a render preview. So this is the 25%, but now if I want to make sure that everything looks nice and 100%, I enter 100% here, press F12, and then I have my preview, and this is how it will look in the frame. This is how this very frame will be rendered. So you can also do this by clicking here and then render image. And here I changed the shortcut. I think the normal shortcut is Control F12, but it doesn't work on my notebook keyboard because it has functional keys, and for some reason it doesn't accept F12 unless I press Control Shift F12. So Control F12 is just not recognized on my ThinkPad keyboard, so I have changed this shortcut. I don't really care. I can remember every shortcut I want. Back to the options. So 25 frames per second, that is standard with the Sony Alpha and Sony RX100, which are my 2 cameras. But sometimes with the Nikon, you have these not quite round numbers. I don't know where this comes from as camera spec. So these are options I have used in the past, and it's just so that the audio and video will align properly. Usually this is set automatically if you import the first frame, but if it isn't, then you can change the frame rate here. So, and then everything else stays the same. As I said, 100% change that if you want a fast pre-render. And this is just the frame range, which you can also set in here. This is your first frame. My first frame, I always set it to 0, but for some reason, if you open a blank Blender file, it's set to 1. But if you set it to 1, then you can always just select one next to it. You can always go to 0. Like this is the first one you can select. And so if you drag stuff over, you will always miss like the first frame. That's not a big bug, but it's a little bit annoying. Anyway, so I would always choose a frame number 0 as the first frame, because before that you cannot select anything. I can click here and I cannot click any of that. So it's just decor. Like I use it to store stuff. I store my adjustment layers here. If I don't have an adjustment yet, I'm just going to store my adjustment adjustment layer over on this side of the video sequence editor, and that's about it. So I use that to store stuff because it's not affected by any operations like remove spaces or stuff like that. Anyway, so these settings you can also set in here. You can just scroll over here. Yeah, that's your frame number 0, and then there's the end frame. But you can also set any end frame you want. Like you can put the cursor here, you select that in this upper little strip where the times are. So for me, like just a little interruption here, if you press Ctrl T, you see the frames, and if you press Ctrl T again, you see the timestamps. So I put it in this timestamp, like I want the video no longer than 8 minutes, right? And then I press Ctrl and then you have it on the 8-minute mark here, right? So everything after that is black and everything in front is a little bit gray. I have the dark theme here. And then you can press position 1 or home or something, what is in a keyboard, and it will automatically adapt to all the elements that you have, as in all these things here. And then also if there is nothing in this area, it will also zoom in to your frame range. If there's nothing after, yeah, I mean, you can store stuff behind this mark, so you can store it over here. And if I now press home again, then it'll include this. And if I put it here, home again, it'll just zoom into all I have. But the minimum zoom is always the range that I selected, as in my start frame and my end frame. Anyways, so here goes the adjustment layer. I'm going to change this back because this is going to be a long video, maybe 30 minutes. And don't forget to back up and store. Blender automatically generates a blend1 file, which is a backup file of your Blender file, your .blend file. And you can use that to restore your Blender session, your Blender file here. But I don't recommend relying on it, because if you've done a lot of edits at once, which is typically when Blender crashes, like you've done so much stuff, then all this stuff is gone, right? So just press Ctrl S whenever you feel like it. Just Ctrl S all the time whenever you go. Like that's a crazy developer thing. Just adopt that and do that whenever. Then the next important thing, metadata, that's not important, output. So the output directory here is the //temp directory. / is here used as like a placeholder because it is in the same directory, and you don't just enter /, you enter //. That's a common thing in a lot of programming languages. I'm sure it's based on some, I don't know, on whatever Blender is programmed in. But yeah, this is a relative path within where we're at. Like when I open this, this is within the directory where my video will be. So the Blender file is here, and in the same directory is the temp directory. So I'm not going to select this because I want paths to be relative. And I recommend always doing that when you have a new Blender template or Blender file. Just go to File and then go to External Data and make paths relative. It's going to save you a lot of trouble. You don't want to have absolute path addresses. Then of course you want to save the file extensions, and we are using FFmpeg video. I hope you have FFmpeg installed. This is my Debian 11 distribution I am doing this on, and I have FFmpeg installed. I have a whole blog post just about this problem and which settings give you the best results, so you can check that out. But now let's talk about the encoding. So I have selected FFmpeg video here. You can choose from a variety of formats. I think the generic one that is chosen when you've just freshly installed Blender will be PNG. So that's like single output of images, and if you don't change anything, then you will just dish out a bunch of PNG files. So let's change that. So you choose FFmpeg and RGB color, which should be selected already. The encoding, for some reason I have Matroska here, but YouTube recommendation is to use MPEG-4 as a container. And then you go to video, and the codec you should use is H264, which is a streaming format that is standard for YouTube. YouTube claims that if you choose the correct specifications, then your processing will be faster. But to be honest, I've been accidentally using Matroska for like, I don't know, 2 years. And then I switched to MPEG-4 and absolutely jack shit has changed. So I don't know. So you can choose perceptually lossless here. Lossless usually doesn't do shit, or on some computers I've heard it just doesn't work because the FFmpeg settings don't line up with the Blender settings. I don't know what command Blender exactly pushes to FFmpeg in order to render the video, but for some people it doesn't work. So I always choose perceptually lossless. Encoding speed, good. You can also do slowest. Then you get a slightly smaller file, but to me it is insignificant, so I don't really choose that. Now the keyframe interval should be set to 1. That means you render every single keyframe. I have recently tested this with a little animation, and standard is it's set to 18. So every 18th frame is rendered, but actually it's still rendered every single frame in the video sequence editor. So I don't know if it just doesn't work with the video sequence editor, and if you render video, as in like render animation here, and you have the sequencer and you have just video files to render, or just images to render into some video file like this, then maybe it doesn't work. I'm not a Blender developer. I'm just a Linux user who likes to use open source software for everything, and that's why I use Blender. So yeah. If anybody knows why the keyframe interval doesn't really matter, or it does on your computer, just from what I've read in the manual and on Stack Exchange, you should set this to 1 to render every single frame. But Blender is a 3D animation software primarily. Like the video sequence editor is like its own little branch of Blender. Like sometimes it feels like it doesn't even really belong to Blender, and they haven't done a lot of development on it for a while. Just recently they have improved a bunch of shortcuts and look and feel and everything. So I hope that they will continue to do that. But yeah, just so you know, it's not their primary thing they care about, I think. Now to the audio codec. I have MP3 and 320 kilobits per second. So this is my standard overkill bitrate that I choose. I choose this for everything because I use this for podcasts too. And I just personally like the MP3 format because it was invented in the city where I studied. But yeah, no, no, that's not really why I do it. I think I had an AAC problem. Like AAC is the recommended one for YouTube videos, like Google themselves say use AAC, but if it doesn't work on your computer for some reason, I think I had some library missing, or I don't know, I didn't have the latest version of FFmpeg or something. I don't remember, but I remember that 2 years ago it didn't work and I just stuck with MP3 instead because I was too lazy to fix the problem. And so if you're lazy too, you can choose MP3 as well. I don't think that Google will suffer much, and I don't think it impacts your processing speed when you upload the YouTube video. But anyway, the recommendation is to use AAC. Yeah, that's that. So let's go back to MP3. Fuck you, YouTube. Anyway, I don't know why everybody hates MP3, but then they listen to the YouTube videos and stuff like this. Seriously, man? You can't hear those frequencies anyway, and I can't hear them because I'm almost 40. So let's see if that aggravates people in the comments. That's it with the settings. If you have any questions, let me know. Now we are going to move on to the Windows setup. So as you can see, I have the settings manager here. This is just for me to make sure that everything is correct because I want to test that. And I also want to have access to this size thing here if I want to do a pre-render. I used to do that when I had like really long videos. I just wanted to know if there were any glitches or like out of sync issues with audio and video, so I would use to edit this here. And then here's my keyframe window. I don't have the options up, like the side panel where all the options are in, because I don't really need that. I can edit everything with my keyboard and shortcuts and select everything with the mouse. I don't really need this menu for purpose of video editing. And then here's the preview window. And in the preview window, this is a output of the video sequence editor. So if you select here, you would go video sequencer, right? And then you can switch between sequence and preview, which is like the bundle. So you have the sequencer and the preview. I don't like that. I like to have it separate. You can have the preview only or the sequencer, but this is the same as the window below. So I choose the preview here, and then I usually go to fractional zoom, and I choose 1/4, which is 25%, which is exactly my proxy settings, right? So my proxy is set to 25%, use proxies is activated, and prefetch frames is not activated because I don't feel like it does anything. Yeah, and that's it. You only need this. And now if you insert any kind of video footage, it will usually try to create proxies right away. Now down here I have the sequencer. And in the sequencer, you can select which kind of frames you want to see. Like you can deselect these upper channels and they will not be shown. And this is very practical when you just want to edit audio or you want to remove an effect strip. And so I recommend that you use these channels. You can also, if you're super good, you can name them. Like usually I have a movie is down below here. I have these stoppers here, so whenever I put in an input, I can just drop it here and it will snap to frame 0, because these are my stoppers, and I just bump whatever I drop here against this. So I don't have to worry about that. Usually the first channel is my audio or video or something, and then above there is, I think it's named audio, but it's supposed to be video. So let's rename that using F2. Video, and then this is audio number 1, and then sometimes I have audio number 2 and also voiceover, but you don't have to do that. So in this strip views or video sequencer view, you can move around these strips by clicking on a strip, and then I can just move it. So I can just use this and drop the strip wherever I want. I can also press G, and then it's like grab, G grab, and then put it anywhere and click left and then drop it. So when I have the cursor over a strip, I can change the length of the strip by pressing E. So when I'm with my cursor on the left to the selector cursor, like the timestamp cursor here. So with my mouse pointer cursor, I'm on the left to this cursor, and I can press E, and then it'll change the length of the strip to the left side. When I'm on the right side, press E, same to the right. It's very, very handy if you want to remove gaps or anything from audio. And so again, I can grab this. And now if I want to grab this and move it only in one direction, and I can use grab and then press X, so it only goes on the X-axis, it only moves here. And if I want to only move it up and down, then I will press G and then Y, and so it only is restricted to the vertical axis here. And you can switch by pressing X and Y. You don't have to press escape or something like that. You can also select it with the mouse cursor and just move it around with your mouse. Press X while holding the mouse button down, or Y. And another shortcut that I like is hide, then it's hidden, and it's H, press H, and Alt H reverses that. Alt something usually reverses what you did before. So keep that in mind. Anyway, that's my adjustment layer that goes here. And now I want to show you what I do with the proxies, and then we're almost done, I think. Okay, now I will insert the video file. You can do this in 2 different ways, or many different ways, but one is Shift A and then insert movie, and then it opens this here, and then can go to raw, and here's my recording of my very self in the kitchen. Or I can just go to the file manager where I have my files here, file browser, and then select this file and drag and drop it in here. So if you drag and drop, make sure you're actually in the video sequence editor, not somewhere else. and hover it over the window, the Blender window for a bit, and then drop it. Nice, here we go. It used to go where the cursor was, like the blue timeline cursor, but it doesn't do that anymore because it's stupid, I don't know. And so I will grab it and drag it to the beginning. Now I drop it, here's my face. Oh yeah, very flattering shot of me. I'm making coffee there. And then I will press home and see how long this is. And yeah, that looks fine. And now we are just waiting for the preview to load. I usually deactivate the channel number 2 where all the video is for this purpose because I don't need the video to edit the audio, and this is the audio strip, the green one. I will check here if it's activated to see what waveform display. So waveform display is by default on in my template because I want the waveforms, and now the waveforms have loaded and we can zoom in. And now all I do is usually just select the strips, like both strips, because I want to do all the cutting, and now I cut out all the awkward silence. You can select 2 strips usually by just clicking Control and left click here onto the strips, and then you can move around this cursor without actually always hitting the nice little timeline bar up here. You can also move this by Shift and right clicking on your mouse. Shift and right click, you can go anywhere. It's way faster if this channel is deactivated. Mind you though, don't click into this strip above or you will have a preview, and if your proxies are not loaded yet, then it's slow. So now you see my proxies are already loading. They're at 16%. Proxies are the pre-rendered low resolution previews for the video editing preview here. So above, because I selected proxies and 25% and not scene size is the original footage, up here what is showing up when the proxies are rendered, as in all the files are rendered into smaller files by Blender, which is happening down here. After this is done, what you will then have is a previewable and fast small file in low quality that you can use to edit. So this will make your editing a lot faster. I also recommend choosing sync to audio here in the playback options and deactivate everything but video sequencer because you don't need to animate anything else, so deactivate it. But this will make your editing super fast or faster. And now I'm selecting this again, so I'm pressing Control and left click, and then I'm Shift right clicking into the area here in the sound strip where I want to go, and then I press C, or in your case K, but for me I'm a right-handed person, so for me it's handier to have C. I had selected C as a shortcut here, and then grab and drag it over here. You know, if you drag it over there, it just snaps right in the position where you want it. There are several ways how you can edit this. You know, you can go here, C, and then C and press X or delete to delete this silence. And then, you know, you can click there and cut, and then you can go to the left of it and E, and then you just drag the end. You can hear again. I press cut, then go to the right, E, and then until I like it, right? This is a handy way if you don't want carpal tunnel syndrome because you're doing everything with just mouse clicks on one side. So this is a nice way to do it. Or just cut, X. Cut, X. Or you just do a bunch of cuts, cut, and then you select all of them together. I have Control and Shift pressed and then left click into these. It'll always select 2 strips together. It's very handy. And then X, and they're all gone. Otherwise, I would have to do it like this. I select both strips by going Control, left click, cut, and then X. So these are your options, and that is how you edit a lengthy file in Blender. And now if you want all these gaps removed, all you do is you go to the left of the gaps and press Shift backspace, and they're all gone. Nice, right? If you only press backspace, this happens. Also handy. And that's it. That's everything with the Blender. If you are done editing all of this, make sure you set this to 100 and then go render animation, and you're good, and your file output should then be in your temp directory. don't forget to make all the paths relative. If you have any questions about Blender and editing, let me know in the comments. I will try to answer them. I am not a Blender developer, so I don't have all the answers. I'm just a Linux user who likes to fully edit open source.